All right, man, peace. You know what, brothers? Keep your eyes out for a possible situation with Karl Anthony Towns over the course of this season. It's not to say that they're going to trade him. I think that his value is too high for them to consider trading him. But he could be a malcontent for this season, playing with Minnesota, because it's very obvious to me that he does not like the coach, and he does not like playing alongside Jimmy Butler, who he most likely believes is an agent of the coach. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Headline, but the biggest thing I think that people are going to read into is the contract extension for Karl Anthony Towns. He's eligible to sign a 5-year extension with Minnesota. What are the latest negotiations between Cat and the Wolves?
Well, there's nothing happening right now. Now, remember, he has until October 31st to get this deal done.
You have to wonder, and at the bottom of my screen here it says, eligible for a 5-year, $158 million extension. If Karl Anthony Towns has not signed that deal yet, one would think that they offered him the full $158 million deal. So if he has not signed it yet, what's stopping him from signing it? The only thing that I could think of is that he wants the coach to be fired. So don't be surprised if Karl Anthony Towns does not play as well as he could play early on in this season, so that he can let the Minnesota Timberwolves front office know either you're going to move me or you're going to move him.
Higher profile players like Cat typically have gotten these done earlier. Devin Booker did his extension this summer on July 1st with the Suns.
Now, there have been rumors, or at least there were rumors, before the Phoenix Suns drafted DeAndre Ayton, that Karl Anthony Towns wanted to team up with his former Kentucky Wildcat teammate Devin Booker in Phoenix. Now, that's not quite as good a mix because, as I've already stated, they have Ayton. So what exactly does Karl Anthony Towns have planned? Once again, he's slotted, meaning what? He can't get more than $158 million. And with him being considered basically a blue chip prospect in the NBA, you would think that the Minnesota Timberwolves are not trying to play any games with this and that they offered him the $158 million extension. So if they have and he has not signed it, it's very clear that there's a hang-up, that hang-up being the head coach and most likely Jimmy Butler as well.
A year ago, when Andrew Wiggins did his deal with the extension with the Wolves, it got done, I want to say right about this time. It had been lined up for a while. The fact that this isn't getting done yet is sort of eyebrow-raising. To me, I believe he's going to sign it. There's never been a player who hasn't signed it.
Right, but Brian Windhorst, why would this be eyebrow-raising to you? You're an NBA insider. You know what the deal is already, man. Stop playing coy.
The question, again, will be, to me, what type of deal is it? Is it a full 5-year extension? Is it Cat saying this is where I'm going to be? Or does he take the shorter extension? And this is...
Well, Cat is what? He's going to be coming up on 22 years old this year? Even if he signs a 5-year extension, that does not necessarily mean that that's where he's going to end up. At 27 years old, he probably has 2 more major deals in the NBA left in him.
This has happened other places, but we just go to Kevin Love. Kevin Love with the Wolves took a 3-year extension, and basically that started the clock on him wanting out. Does Karl Towns, who isn't necessarily comfortable with how everything's going with the team this year, does he commit and say, I want to be here for 5 years? And maybe he will, Cass. Maybe that'll happen in a couple of weeks. Until it does, I do think that there's fair to wonder just how strong that bond is between him and the franchise.
I don't think that it's just fair to wonder. I think that you have to wonder it. Because either way, this deal should have been signed by now. The fact that he hasn't signed it means either the Minnesota Timberwolves are not offering him the max, which I have a hard time believing, or they have and he has not signed it. And for him to not have signed that 5-year, $158 million extension tells me that there's a major hang-up.
It's a matter of when, not if, on the money. And to your point, the years will work themselves out. But guys, being around that team a lot last year, I think Jimmy's probably going to be gone a year from right now somewhere else.
A year from right now or the trading deadline? One of the two.
Somewhere else. And if I'm a Timberwolves fan and if I'm Tibbs looking at how my roster is getting constructed, nobody wants that Wiggins deal. It looks awful. And Towns, for as great as he is offensively, defensively, there were plenty of times in games last year where his teammates and his coaches would be like, what is this guy doing out there on the floor? And you're tying your franchise to 2 young guys who they can't
Who's
get
a
better.
bigger risk right now, tying it to Jimmy or tying it to Karl Anthony Towns?
I would take Jimmy in a heartbeat over.
Well, you would take Jimmy in a heartbeat because you're based out of Chicago. You're still thinking back to those years in the early 2010s where Jimmy Butler came to the forefront as a defensive stopper. and really as the heart of that team after Derrick Rose went down. That's what you're still reminiscing about. But if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you're looking at a 21-year-old Karl Anthony Towns, a player averaging about 21 points and about 12 rebounds per game. And if the biggest problem that he has is knowing what his defensive assignment is, that means that you're blessed. Because this guy, Karl Anthony Towns, shoots 80 to 85% from the free throw line, which is very difficult to find at center. Now, interestingly enough, many of the top centers in today's NBA shoot a very high percentage from the free throw line, which is a great thing. But to have a person like a Karl Anthony Towns who's as efficient as he is in all the other areas of the game, and all he really needs to work on is his defense, that to me is not what I would call insignificant, but it's not that big a deal. You can work with someone on their defense. Oftentimes, players have a hard time on defense because their conditioning is not at the level where it needs to be, or sometimes their attention to detail is not where it needs to be. But you definitely have to keep Karl Anthony Towns over Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler is not going to be your alpha in regards to winning a championship. Karl Anthony Towns could be if he gets to a high enough level.
Over Towns.
But if he's expressed that maybe he doesn't want to be in Minnesota.
And there's the problem. That's why Tom's got to have that honest conversation, whether it comes now or in a few months, and say, do you really want to be here? And if Jimmy's kind of like, we'll see, then I would make the move. But knowing Tom the way I have and having covered him over the last few years, I don't think he would do that. So I think the Timberwolves are stuck with what they've got right now. And the problem is they're going to be stuck with Towns and Wiggins if Jimmy leaves. And that team is not good enough.
And that's why, Cass.
They are going to be stuck with Towns and Wiggins if Jimmy leaves. But even if Jimmy stays, they're not good enough to do anything anyway. They went out in the first round last year. This guy's acting as if Jimmy Butler led them to the conference finals. Jimmy Butler is a very, very good complementary player. Dare I say, a great complementary player. He'd be an elite level third option. But he's not going to be your primary option on a championship contending team. No way in hell.
Over this last year, there have been times when teams have called the Wolves just to sort of put their finger in the air and say, hey, is Cat available? And they've been told, no, absolutely not. We got him on this team. But the reason that those calls come in is because teams are out there seeing what Nick is talking about.
I'm saying, get the
I saw it. I was reporting on this months ago.
Get the graphic started for As the Tips Turns. Come on now. Meanwhile, former...
But anyway, that's basically it on that. But this Karl Anthony Towns situation is definitely something to watch. So peace.